Warm welcome to everybody this morning, the fourth day of our annual summit, our festival of ideas. And gosh, the time is flying by rapidly. And I've really been waiting with great anticipation for this session, Cultivating Leadership, Inspiring the Next Wave of Talent and Future Leaders. No pressures, folks, but it's been a brilliant year. And we really look forward to celebrating what's come out of this year with our 23-24 class. As Jerome said, my name is Jeremy Porteus. I'm the founder and chief exec of the Housing Learning Improvement Network, or Housing LIN for short. And our small team has pulled a really exciting program of events for you this week, including this one. And as Jerome said, for those of you who can't join us in person today and live stream, the sessions are all being recorded and you can watch at your leisure. We've had over 40 speakers signed up to speak and present, sharing their expertise and ideas. We've had over 600 people register, and we're expecting about 2,500 streams, both live as well as people watching again at their convenience. So a great turnout and a great thanks to everybody for supporting us in so many ways. As Jerome says, social media plays an important role in us promoting and disseminating our findings. So please do use the hashtag HLINSummit24 and copy in our handle if you want to make a comment or any suggestions about what you've learned or heard about from our inspiring presenters this morning. This year's summit is the fourth summit in recent years, which has been virtual, and the 12th in total since the Department of Health. We left the Department of Health, where we were responsible for the management of the Extra Care Housing Fund and supporting the implementation of building telecare in England. We've got a great track record of championing housing with care, extra care housing and integrated retirement communities, working closely with other partners to promote that. And indeed, the current Older Persons Housing Task Force is again a critical part of our journey. So we look forward to sort of unlocking some of that and also to encourage how and learn how future leaders are taking that on board. But before we commence with introducing Jamie and the future leaders, just a little word to thank all our sponsors and our supporters for making this possible. We have a number of headline sponsors, including Inspired Villages, and Jamie personally, but big thanks for your support, as well as associate sponsors. And during the course of the week, each of the sponsors have had a particular session with focus on a theme. And this one, as you know, is about cultivating leadership. And now turning to this session in particular, a big thank you to Jamie and the Inspired Villages team. And personally, can I also thank not just Jamie, but Lawrence and Emma behind the scenes. They've been inspirational in enabling us to put on this programme. We've got a great lineup for you. We've got Jamie Bunce, the Chief Exec of Inspired Villages Group, and then we've got 8 of the 9 future leaders from this programme who are going to, in turn and in couplets, share with you their learning and lessons that they've found and what inspiration they've drawn from the programme that we ran this year. But before I hand over to Jamie, I just want to formally make an announcement that such has been the success of our partnership with Inspired Villages, we're delighted that we're actually going to be holding a future leaders cohort, a 4th cohort for next year. For 24-25. So today we formally announce our 24-25 Future Leaders Programme. And if you are an early career professional watching, or have a colleague or a friend who is an early career who's really inspired and passionate about this sector, we encourage them to apply. The deadline for applications is the 3rd of May. So, you know, they're a couple of months away yet, but have a conversation with us, listen and be inspired by today's session, and we hope to see your applications so that we can invite you to this year's programme. But I don't want to steal the thunder of this year's the 23-24 programme, because we got lots of fantastic learning to share with you. But before we invite Emily and the team to sort of talk, Jamie, over to you, and thanks again personally for your support.
Thank you, Jeremy. Good morning, everybody. I'm absolutely delighted to be able to help support this cohort. So we did last year, and I came away from that session learning a lot, actually, from that group of future leaders and people that I've kept in touch with through social media, LinkedIn principally connections since, because I found the input from last year's group was very inspiring, I'd say. And when we think about what is next for talent coming into this sector, what are the future leaders, and how do people interact within this wonderful place to work? It's fascinating. Because you are the future. People linking into this are the future. And it's up for the likes of Jeremy and myself and others in the sector to give you the tools in order to make the most amazing careers, the most amazing businesses, and really to reach to where you want to get to. You know, the sector allows you to go as far as you want to go, and people working and running businesses like mine are focused massively on your own career journeys. I've got a few slides. I'll get through them quickly because I am actually really looking forward to hearing what people are going to say as well, which is what the most important thing. So I think Jerome's driving this for me, so I want to do my best Chris Whitty through this and say next on these. So yes, I'm Jamie Bunce. I'm the CEO of the business, one of three founders, originators, I say, of Inspired Villages Group. Next, please, Jerome. So I want to introduce ourselves. This is our scheme in Austin Heath, residents having a cup of tea on a sunny afternoon. So next, please. So who are we? So we're an operator and developer of something called integrated retirement communities. Started in the sector in 2008 when we formed our first business, and in 2017 got a good kickstart really with investment through Legal and General Capital. We then in 2021 got a co-investment from NatWest Group Pensions that allowed us finance to deliver 34 villages across the UK, with 9 now operating, 20 in a pipeline, with nearly 2,800 homes with planning, which is pretty much just over halfway to our goal of where we want to get to. We have 2 villages opening this year, and we're sort of moving from that startup to scale up to now maturing. Next, please. So what does that mean in numbers? Millfield Green opened in 2023. It actually opened in December, which is really good for sales. I've got to say. It opened in 2023. We've got 9 communities now supporting. It's actually a few more than that. So it's now nearly 1,300 residents since this was written. Pretty much the whole of the 34 sites are within the pipeline, and a series of planning applications constantly going through the system. So our planning colleagues that have been part of this cohort and involved in it know full well the challenges that faces. We sell and we resell. So as an operator, we're not just about the first sale. That's why I say we're an operator developer. Our focus is on the long term. We build for the long term. We're very focused on the long term because we sell and then we resell properties for people who are living with us. We have 370 people. When this was written, actually, there's a few more than that now. So we have 370 people within the business, and 179 new people started in 2023. We give back. So each person who works with all of our colleagues have the ability to give 3 days back a year to good causes, to things that they're special to, things that's important to them. And we also look to create a recognition. So we 2,000 e-cards sent across the business of recognising your colleagues, just telling somebody to do a good job. You know, it's not difficult to actually to say thanks to people. We want to try and challenge to do that. Over 1,600 hours of learning and development. And I think 16 my things over this. So I think it's 16 colleagues were promoted. Next, please. So quickly, what is an IRC? Jeremy said we've got housing with care, retirement housing, integrated retirement communities. It's a nascent sector. This really is a new sector. So anybody looking to come into it, you have the ability to make a massive difference because it hasn't got ingrained parts to it, which is the thing I love about this. I love about seeing people evolve within the business, because things that are common sense to us aren't actually happening out in the way in the people. People as they're getting older aren't necessarily getting the best years of their lives. That's why we want to give them that. Next slide, please. So an IOC for us is a purpose-built community of both independent and assisted living. Our average age is 80. Our oldest person is 107. We have a huge focus on health and well-being. It's really all about people's own lives. It's creating the most purposeful life for people, and we're an enabler of that in both a built form and as an operating platform. We focus on holistic well-being, which is physical, mental, social, and financial well-being for us. And we give people support through domiciliary care. So that's the regulated care part of our business. We outsource that to a third party. But the non-regulatory care is the bit that we can affect. That's frankly cups of tea, it's human interface, it's holding hands with people as they age, it's going on the journey with people so that they're really aging well, but it's creating an environment that actually manifests into a positive outcome for people to live the most purposeful life they can. Next, please. So the market, next, please. So currently there are over 12 million people who are 65 and above living in the UK. That's due to go to 18 million people by 2040. At the same time, the number of over 80s is doubling in that time. Yet there are only a fraction of homes available for people now, let alone in the future. So there's a significant supply-demand graph. And if you look at the changing in demography, the amount of people are getting older, then it means that on a commercial sense, this sector can only go one way, just by the shape of the way in which people are aging. What we tend to do, though, we tend to look at that, and whilst our average age is 80, as I say, 80.1, I think now, we're focused very much on the biological age. And this is a fascinating thing. This is a thing that when you're looking at this sector to come into it, this is what our point of difference is. So somebody could be 90 years old and lived 90 years. We had a birthday party yesterday in one of the schemes I was in. But we can actually now prove that people living with us, engaging with us, being part of our community, are frankly getting younger. So we focus more on your biological age than your chronological age. And we want to put initiatives in that enable us to do that. And the necessary benefit to health and social care, reduction in GP visitation, reduction in hospitalisation, etc., will play out better for us in this sector. Because at the moment, there is only it's actually 0.7% of the UK who live in this type of accommodation in comparison to 5 to 6% in the world. And actually, elsewhere in the world, that percentage is rising quite rapidly, especially in New Zealand and Australia. We should get the same amount of market penetration, but to do that, we've got a huge undersupply. So again, this is why the likes of Legal & General and NatWest and AXA and a number of other large institutions are seeing this as a place to spend your money. Nothing like retirement income to pay for retirement living. That imbalance is only going to get better. So, but for us, we see ourselves and the UK being the best in the world. There's no reason why we can't. And with good talent and very engaged people and great ways to educate and nurture great talent, then we can be the best in the world. Wouldn't it be cool to be involved in that? I think it'd just be wonderful. So I'd urge all of you listening to really think about that as a career opportunity for you. Next, please. This is some of our talent. Look at Motley Bunch down in Exeter. But next, please. So very quickly, when we look in our we look for two main reasons. People are going to live our purpose for our residents and our colleagues to deliver that best years of their lives, and to create careers without limits. We really want to see this ABC. What's people's attitude? What is their behaviour? What is their commitment? Then we can train people. So for people coming into the sector, no matter what your experience is, if you've got the right attitude and you deliver the right behaviour and you're really committed to going on a journey, then we'll match that. And our competitors are the same. It's not just the one for Inspired Villages. I could name every one of our competitors have the same drive. And this is the exciting thing about what we're looking to do. And this is why we think supporting Housing LIN and the Future Leader Programme is absolutely the right thing to do. Next, please. So we have leadership teams, we have future leader programs, we have excellence programs, we mentor, we have a coaching style with people. We're obviously linking with Housing LIN and want to build that up. We have a series of programs that we're driving in place. We piloted our first intern program last year, which was fascinating. We had a couple of people in for the summer. and they ultimately did a project and fed back their impressions of us, and we learned a lot from that, which was great, because it's all about learning, it's all about evolving ourselves. Next, please. Promoted 17 colleagues, sorry, I didn't really was 17, and identified talent, lots and lots of feedback, lots and lots of support, as much as we possibly can at these. Next, please. Got a little video, so it's not for me to show, but a little video now, if Jerome can get this to play. So very quickly, that was our Viva winners. So we have our very inspired village awards, and every year we hold these awards. And this was a celebration with Derek Redmond. Probably most people who are listening to this won't know Derek Redmond, but he famously failed to finish a race in the Olympics, I think in 1892, but showed great resilience. And he's a wonderful speaker and gave people some really good insight into success. As Jeremy said, you know, this is our second year of this. It's an absolute no-brainer for me to help support Housing LIN on this Future Leaders programme. You know, more than delighted to get involved, more than delighted to help support, and working with Jeremy and his team has been a pleasure. And I'll say that on behalf of Lawrence and Emma, because I know they're listening in and they'd want to name check it. Next, please. So we're going to dwell on this. Is my last slide. So it's so every year we have our little book of inspirations. This is a book which celebrates our colleagues, and what I urge you to do is to get on your phones, get the QR code, download. I think it links you to YouTube or wherever. Look at the bit. This is our people telling their own stories. But what I'd like you to make sure you look at is on a number of the stories there's a video, and people then have got a video about their own experience of working with us and this sector. So please, if you could, you know, just have a look at it. It's a very interesting read, I think, and actually gives you a flavour about people's own experience and own views of what this sector is about. I think that's me done. Thank you very much for listening, and at the appropriate time, I think questions, but I think personally want to get straight into hearing what this cohort have got to say. Thank you.
Absolutely, and thank you ever so, Jamie, and also, as you rightly say, thank you to your team who've really been supportive behind the scenes, as well as I really should give credit to both the future leaders, but also those who gave up their free time to come and share their insights. And I'm sure the next session now will just draw on their reflections on what they've heard from them. So I'm going to pass over to Sally, who's going to just sort of help me compare this to start off with. And then I think Emily's going to kick off, but Sally first.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy and Jamie, for that presentation. I think Amy's just going to pop some slides up on the screen. But yeah, we essentially look forward to sharing with you our thoughts and learnings from the programme over the next half an hour or so. But before we dive into that, I think we're just going to go around the room and tell you who we are. So if I start, I'm Sally Taylor-Ridgway, the Housing LIN's Communications and Membership Officer.
Emily Tantrum, Land Assistant at Inspire Villages.
Morgan Toom, United and Saviours, the Appleby Blue Centre Manager.
Hello, I'm Callum Solomon and I work as Architectural Technologies for Stoke-on-Trent City Council.
Hi, I'm Bana Rashid and I'm a Project Architect at Levitt Bernstein.
Hi everyone, I'm Alice Witten. I'm a Financial Modeller at Inspired Villages.
Hi, my name's Faye Patton. I'm a Policy and Project Manager at Care and Pair Cymru.
Hi everyone, I am Amy Sims and I am a sheltered housing team leader for Caerphilly County Borough Council in South Wales.
Great, I think, yeah, that was all of us. So I think, Emily, you're going to start.
Thank you, Sally. So first of all, I'll introduce my role first. I'm a land and development surveyor for Inspired Villages. So I find the land and take developments through to being built. So my role is to manage an array of consultants such as lawyers, engineers, architects, ecologists, with the aim of creating a retirement village that meets the business needs. So when I was chatting to Morgan, who's involved in the community side and bringing that kind of house into a home, we kind of came up with this I build the house, she builds the home phrase. So I'll pass you on to Morgan to explain a bit about her role.
Hi, I am the centre manager at Appleby Blue. The vision for Appleby Blue was to create social housing for older people so that they can continue to live in London and not be pushed out to the countryside. But these homes, we wanted them to be desirable, good quality, so that they felt that they wanted to leave and free up some council properties. The design of Appleby has, at the core of it is to encourage social interactions and connections. So you can see everything's full of glass windows. The residents themselves can look down into the community spaces and see that there's something always happening, or it makes them just not feel alone. And then on the outside, like the wider community can look into the community spaces and just see the vibrancy and the life that our residents are living. Fundamentally, we believe your last home can be your best home. And so my role is to animate the community spaces and build that community in Appleby. So for the first year, we launched in June. So I've just been encouraging our residents to make friends, to putting on lots of social gatherings. But looking ahead, I'll be building stronger partnerships with charities and community groups so that everybody in the whole community has access to health, education and wellbeing activities. We do have a community kitchen as well. So my learning through this whole period of stepping into leadership has been about learning about the building. So what's been great is partnering with Emily, who has that technical understanding and built the home. So in sharing our experience through the Housing LIN program has been great. Emily, how did you manage to learn the technical expertise, and how is it being a woman in the built environment?
So in terms of technical, I think there's a lot of technical information you'll be exposed to in development at every stage of the process. So different type of legal jargon, planning policy, construction details, etc. But what I've learned is it's okay not to know everything about everything. And that's why you've got your specialist consultants around you. So every project has different things and throws up different things at different stages. So it's about asking the right questions, managing that information and the relationships with those consultants. So one day you might be dealing with great crested newts and bats, and the next you're discussing what types of foundations you need to use. I think in terms of women in leadership, I think female leadership role models are really important for young women because they help them to visualize themselves being leaders. There's so many great examples of highly respected women in the built environment, and I think it can be a real motivator for young women. It motivates me when I listen to their stories in webinars and in like housing sessions because I find their experiences relatable. So when I started working for a contractor, it's quite a male-dominated environment, and I think it can affect how you view leadership. But what I've learned along my journey is that everyone's leadership styles can be different. So I suppose another question for you, Morgan. We've had a number of speakers at Housing LIN talk about crisis situations in their careers. What crisis management have you had to deal with?
So launching a new housing scheme has it's quite tough. There's a lot happening. So managing relationships has been important. There's so many people with different needs and different opinions. We have the building contractors, the resident team, the local authority, community partners, but the most important are our residents. And so leading with a decision confidently is important, and making sure that everyone's aware of why you're making those decisions. Accepting that many people might not agree, or they might have different opinions, but just listening to them. A big lesson for me is not being emotionally attached to the outcome of a situation, and kind of stepping back and always seeing that bigger picture. An example was when I scheduled the same activity as Age UK at the same time, without realising, and Age UK is an older people's services across the road from Appleby. We always said that we would work collaboratively together, but in the moment of launching the space, it was quite hard for me, building a new team, moving in 65 residents in 4 months. And then I had loads of residents who were very eager to have the community spaces used more, and just making it feel like a home. So yes, I programmed something without kind of looking at what Age UK was doing, and both parties become quite upset. They didn't feel that we were involving ourselves into what they were doing, and I just couldn't think outside what I was doing. So yeah, we learned from this. We've improved our communication, and we now identified areas of collaboration. So we've got a big digital inclusion program happening that we're working on together. So yes, it worked out well in the end. Do you have any reflections, Emily, on any crises that you've managed?
So I think for me, dealing with the insolvency of a contractor on one of the developments that I was on was a big lesson for me. And learning, like yourself, not to take it personally, not to get too emotionally involved, which is quite hard to do. So when you're in a project that goes on for years, you know, we're talking 4 or 5 years worth of taking it from land to being on site. When something like that happens, it hits quite hard, and it's kind of taking that attachment out of these crisis situations. So I think the thing I took from it as well is that it's always good to feel positive about it, and there's always an answer or a solution to something. It may feel like the end of the world kind of situation, but it's not, and you can work through it. I found listening to other people's career journeys on this HousingLIN really interesting, and how they've overcome difficult challenges. So having the opportunity to have those open and honest conversations has been really helpful. It's been an opportunity to meet new people and be reassured that everyone's leadership journey is different. How did you reflect on your HousingLIN experience, Morgan?
Yeah, it was the same. It was great to hear people's journeys, and the taking I'm going to take from it that I will continue to remember throughout my career is that it's about the significant impact you have on people, not necessarily getting it right every single time. So yes.
Thank you for your reflection, Morgan. We've touched a bit on the importance of inclusive design, but I would like to hear more of that from Banner and Callum, so I'll pass that over to them.
Hi all, thanks for coming. As previously mentioned, my name is Callum Solomon and I work as Architectural Technologies for Stoke-on-Trent City Council. So in my role, it involves designing adaptations for the residents of the city. These types of works range from level access showers, ramping, extensions, etc. I completed my architecture degree in 2022 and was lucky enough to be successful in gaining employment with the council in August that year. In the last 18 months, I've gained a lot of skills and knowledge. This has been monitored by carrying out regular skill and competency checks. So we can see how much I've improved on things like designing, communicating with contractors and customers. And I saw the opportunity to participate in HousingLIN Future Leaders Programme. I knew the work was something I was passionate about and wanted to improve on. So during my time on the HousingLIN Future Leaders Programme, I've had the privilege to listen and learn from several inspiring speakers and future leaders. These conversations have helped enlighten me on what it takes to be effective in leadership. So one of my main takeaways from the programme is the need for morality, and now taking the time understanding the perspective of colleagues and clients is one of the first steps in becoming effective in leadership in the future. A good example of this was Kay Allen's speech on diversity at B&Q, how bringing people who were previously retired who still want to work into B&Q and the benefits this had on a company at a time where a lot of companies wouldn't consider employing someone over the retirement age. This taught me to reflect on my personal journey and how my boss, Claire Price, took a chance on me not too long ago in my role at the council. So I work with mostly senior colleagues with over 10 years of experience, and this led me to feeling a sense of imposter syndrome. So I could relate Kay's story to myself, and this allowed me to understand why I'm here and that it is deserved. That although I had little work experience in the field amongst people with a plethora of knowledge, I do have a fresh perspective, a fresh set of skills. I'm highly ambitious, and most importantly, I have a strong desire to learn. So on the path to progress further in my career, I won't forget these lessons, that everyone has a personal perspective, something to offer, and everyone has a voice and should be heard. Our trip to Elderswall Retirement Village in Bedford was also eye-opening. So hearing the vision of Inspired Villages, now they see the future of retirement living expanding, changing the way people perceive later living through the core values, and how that leaks through to not just leadership and how people are led, but the interaction between the colleagues and residents day to day. Inspired Villages believe that later living should be the best years of your life, and what I took from that is how that was expressed through their architecture. So the use of maximising social spaces and encouraging interaction between residents and staff creates a community-driven environment and ultimately enhances the user experience. I can relate that to my profession, as I also design for the elderly. In my day-to-day work, I provide building adaptations for people in need. So there are fundamentals that can't be ignored simply. However, when I do get the chance to speak to a client face-to-face, whether that be over the phone or during a survey, the interaction and hearing their thoughts and having a conversation, that information is important, and I can incorporate that into my design across the whole design process, really. So yeah, that's very important, and it was interesting to see how user-led design, specifically for the elderly, had an impact on the architecture on a larger scale. So I'll move on to Banner.
Thanks, Callum. So building on from Callum's points about design, leadership obviously plays a very crucial role through the design process, which is also reflected in architectural design and responsibilities. An important part of our role is to advise on and lead design schemes, which form a part of how we live now, but also how we will be living in the future. It's clear through working as an architect that good design is about listening to lots of different players, so clients, planners, users, stakeholders. The list is very long. The design process involves many layers of regulations as well, requirements and considerations from different angles, all of which require balancing with the client's requirements. And as a designer, we have to balance these wider requirements with the day-to-day needs of users, as well as staff, maintenance and managers. Through taking part in this program and listening to lots of different leaders, it's clear that there's the same is true for leadership. So good leadership requires listening to lots of others at all levels, balancing this input and converting it into a positive output. In design terms, this simply means a scheme that considers its users and context, but also goes one step further and thinks about the future of that scheme. And you can see some examples of that on the slide here, where we're talking about sort of designing with longevity, sustainability and technology, new technologies in mind, but also clearly designing spaces that people have a say in. So through engagement and collaboration, creating personal connections from the outset and encouraging new ways of thinking about what makes a place a home, for example. So the link between effective design and leadership is listening, but not just listening. It's also about taking action. The key learning I've taken from this program has been sort of listening to as many voices as possible, and that these will improve my skills as a designer, and also understanding how to put these into practice and disseminating these through the design team. Again, these will improve my skills as a leader. It's really about taking on feedback and turning it into sort of positive actions and changes. During this programme, as Callum mentioned, we went to see the Elders Well Retirement Village, and through that and through the visit to the Almshouse as well, we've had the opportunity to sort of listen to others within the cohort who all have sort of different expertise. We were all really impressed by the quality of the finishes in the Elders Well Retirement Village, you know, creating accessible spaces for older people, but still being really, really high quality. And even more so, I think in the Almshouse, we were able to really discuss kind of key design choices, some things that I thought would be more sort of desirable, whereas my peers sort of looked at it with a different perspective in mind, and having worked with adults with disabilities, had a different sort of idea about these things, and it was all very interesting to hear. So although we all come from differing backgrounds and interests and expertise, we all have this common aim, which is to improve our surroundings. And I think it's a really important thing to remember going forward, that good designs are a result of many people, and good leadership is needed to make it all a reality. And with that, I'll pass it on to Alison Fay, who will be discussing the broader picture around housing and leadership within this sector.
Thanks, Banner. So yeah, Faye and I have decided to talk about the housing sector from more of a policy perspective, and also look at the leadership skills that we've identified as being key for this industry. So it's no secret that UK politics has been particularly turbulent in recent times, and a consequence of this is the high level of turnover that we've seen in mid-level government positions, such as the Minister of State for Housing, with 14 different tenures in the last 10 years. This lack of continuity of the position means that housing doesn't get the political attention that it should. And in addition, the people that hold ministerial positions haven't usually had careers in that sector. So given the average tenure of 9 months, it's understandable why those in the position struggle to achieve much during their term. This isn't to criticise the individuals, but the UK political system as a whole. So combined with other things such as demographic changes and a cost of living crisis, the outcome is that we currently have a housing system that just isn't working for us. So some examples of that are rough sleeping is on the rise, and currently an estimated 140,000 children don't have a place to call home. The UK has fewer homes per adult than most of our European neighbours, like France, Italy, and Spain. And we know that young adults are missing the home ownership milestones that mark the lives of previous generations. Roughly a third of homes in England are said to be underoccupied, with 2 or more bedrooms not in regular use. And we know that delayed discharges have become a huge problem for the NHS, and an estimated 40% of these are due to shortfalls in the social care sector, which we know is partly caused by older people not having age-appropriate accommodation to return home to following a period of bad health. So with these issues and an upcoming election this year, you would think that housing policies would be at the top of the agenda as the political campaigns get underway, but we've still seen very little signalling from either of the major parties on what their plans would be should they win our vote. I'll now hand over to Faye, who will give a bit more context to the housing environment in Wales.
Thanks, Alice. If we could have the next slide, please. Thank you. Yeah, so in Wales, we've had a solidly Labour government since devolution in 1999. So you think that there might be a different story with that kind of presumed stability that comes with having the same government for nearly 25 years. And in some ways there is. So in the time that the UK government has had 14 housing ministers, Wales has only had 5. And at the moment, housing makes up part of the Minister for Climate Change's portfolio. So I work in policy, and I appreciate I'm going to talk quite a lot about I'm going to name check quite a few policies, and I'm going to try and make it not dry, because I know that policy can be a little bit, but I do love it as part of my day job. So yeah, so anyway, so housing makes up part of the Minister for Climate Change's portfolio. And there are some advantages of having such a large scale, almost super portfolio when it comes to the kind of challenges that Wales faces in housing that are so large. So for example, in Wales, we've got the Optimise Retrofit programme, and this began in 2020. and it combines improving housing conditions of the social rented sector with decarbonisation and energy efficiency. So arguably having net zero and housing in the same portfolio means we can kind of, well, we have the same minister signing off essentially the budget for those two things. So we can kind of, you know, get started on those sort of things arguably more easily. This approach has been taken before in Wales as well. So housing used to actually make up part of the Minister for Social Justice's portfolio too. So I think you could argue that this makes Wales in this sense, or the Welsh Government, are trying to take a more holistic approach, recognising that housing underpins lots of different parts of a nation's health and wealth. You could also argue that this kind of moving around portfolio shows that housing is really tricky, and for all the opportunities that this presents, it's also, there's a lot of challenges and a bit of a struggle that comes with it too. So regardless of the kind of conclusion you want to draw there, the same challenges have really befallen the Welsh Government that Alice mentioned. So even with this kind of continuous government over the last 25 years, we still have really slow house building, a lack of social housing. There's not enough accessible housing in Wales, especially for an ageing population, by kind of tens of thousands of units. And we also have increasing levels of homelessness, and that the list really goes on. I think there could be a few reasons for this. So although the Senedd, the Welsh Parliament, runs in 5-year cycles, or arguably a 25-year cycle at this point, budget settlements remain annual, and they're largely beholden to the Barnett consequentials formula. So for example, you might have seen the news over summer, the Welsh Government put out a statement talking about a £900 million shortfall in real terms in Wales. And that was in response to the UK government spring budget. So there's ramifications from the UK that kind of filter down into Wales. And although there are really grand ambitions and housing policies, so for example, a second version of the Welsh Housing Quality Standard for social homes, which is really quite ambitious, and the Renting Homes Wales Act, this was passed in 2016, but it actually only came into force in 2022. So clearly progress is quite slow of getting some of these things to actually work in practice. So perhaps this is what happens when sort of long-term plans conflict with short-term cycles. So if we could have the next slide, please, Amy. Perfect, thank you. So the main difference that I can tell is approach. So in Wales, there's been a really concerted effort to introduce acts, duties and policies that put the citizen at the heart of decision making. So for example, we've got the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. So that requires public bodies to think about the long-term impact of their decisions for people who aren't even born yet, but also me and my peer group as a future generation of older people, for example. The socio-economic duty also requires public bodies to consider the impact of their decision on inequalities. And we've also got the Social Services and Wellbeing Act, which is a really big act that places patient voice and experience at the heart, and lots of others besides. So these acts and duties, they provide a kind of vision, a clear framework within the public sector, that public sector bodies, third sector, housing providers and so forth must operate within. And this is something that I've really learned about leadership from the Housing LIN, listening to the leaders that we've met. So they've talked about a shift in leadership from being about the individual who is leading to the individuals that they're attempting to support. And for me, that's something that really resonates in the housing sector, especially. For me, leadership shouldn't be about serving a thing, it should be about serving the person. And I think the acts that I've mentioned are an attempt, albeit imperfect, don't get me wrong, but to influence leadership away from a method of just delivering numbers to a culture that is putting citizen voice and outcomes higher up that pecking order. And I think before joining the Housing LIN Future Leader Scheme, I probably wouldn't have looked at these acts in such a way. I kind of think of them as a lot, a bit more paperwork on my application for funding or whatever it is. But actually, I probably shouldn't say that. Actually, I've learned from this scheme that leadership is really about taking an intention and then laying other tools on top of it. So create a clear vision and a culture that enables people to think for themselves. And for this, for me, this kind of should provide the freedom to try new things within that vision, and also ensure that, for example, in my leadership in the organisation that I work, that the people I manage are supported to create their own opportunities and mistakes kind of within this framework. And I think that is really what housing leadership needs right now. And I've certainly been inspired by some of the really great examples that we've managed to see through the Future Leader Scheme. So I'll pass back to Alice to talk about the skills that we've learned about from this programme that are for good leadership on a kind of systemic institutional level.
Thanks. Next slide, please, Amy. Thanks. So yeah, I wanted to look at why the housing sector needs long-term leadership in particular, and this is both for the public and the private sector. So firstly, I mean, obviously housing developments typically take many, many years, often decades to complete. From a UK government perspective, where the current political system suffers from short-termism, it's much harder to use housing policy as a tool to win elections. And having a political system with a more long-term view would maybe help bring housing back into the spotlight. From a private sector perspective, the length of developments makes it harder to make good returns quickly. So profit over the life of a development is only possible where long-term planning has been thought through, implemented and followed, and you obviously need strong leadership for that. And also, the clearer the policy you have from government, the easier it is for those private companies to plan over that long-term period. Secondly, I think the housing sector needs long-term leadership because it's a socially complex issue. So where and how we live is one of the biggest drivers on our well-being. It's linked to many public services and issues such as health, education, transport, environment, social mobility, and it therefore needs a long-term holistic approach to policy. And the provision of housing, it's not as straightforward as just building more. Our housing stock needs to be aligned with many things such as commuting patterns, average family sizes, our aging population, and all of these factors will change over time. So our national housing strategy should be based on long-term trends and forecast demographic changes. Thirdly, housing developments can be very sensitive to short-term shocks, but there will always be a long-term need for them. So we've seen in the past couple of years where we've had really high cost inflation, supply chain issues, interest rate hikes, all these things have disrupted the market, but already we're seeing signs of some recovery. So holding a long-term position in the housing sector should allow organisations, both public and private, to balance out the good times with the bad, especially when the bad times are often out of the sector's control. So, you know, things like COVID, geopolitical instability. And lastly, housing needs continuous investment to remain fit for purpose. So increasing the supply of homes is just the first step, but for housing to remain fit for purpose, it needs continuous reinvestment, which needs to be budgeted for over a long period of time, given how lumpy and unpredictable life cycle costs can be. So in terms of long-term leadership, I wanted to have a think about what the key skills that we would need to see in leaders in this space would be. And there are many skills that would be required, but I don't think these necessarily are applying to an individual. I see this more in terms of your whole senior leadership team should have these skills in place. And for me, the most important one is the ability to step back and see the big picture, recognizing that change will be gradual and that you're unlikely to get satisfaction from regular quick wins that you would on more short-term projects. And I think that this is where there's a particular clash with the UK political system. One of the key things that I've learned from the leadership programme is that you can be a leader and exert influence at any level. So whether you work in the private sector or for government, if you see any of the skills on screen missing in your senior leadership team, try to challenge it and help instigate the change needed to improve the current housing situation in the I'll now hand over to Amy, who's going to talk more about the leadership programme and key lessons learned.
Thank you. Just a little bit of background about me and my role. So I'm currently a couple of years into my first leadership role within the housing sector. I work in Caerphilly County Borough Council, so we are essentially a landlord. for thousands of people, and I work specifically in the older person's housing team, which is providing sheltered accommodation for our ageing population. I've had sort of the opportunity to reflect on my leadership journey, having been in the role for a couple of years, and it being my first leadership role. And I sort of recognise now that the first sort of 12 months of being in the leadership role, I had sort of many challenges to overcome. I had to transition from colleague to supervisor. So there were some difficulties there, as well as now supervising team members who'd also applied for the team leader role when I was successful in getting it. So there were definitely hurdles to overcome. I've found from that I've really tried to find out what makes a good leader, especially that in an ever-evolving housing sector. And this was probably one of my main reasons for applying for the Future Leaders Programme. The Future Leaders Programme has helped me to gain an insight and understanding from other like-minded future leaders and current leaders in the field. One of the biggest things I've been able to take from the sessions and speakers is feelings of being very inspired and motivated. I think it's quite easy to sort of just do your day-to-day tasks, get through that to-do list, with the housing sector being so busy. So it's really refreshing actually to come away from the sessions feeling motivated and inspired, and sort of reignited the passion of why I do what I do and why I love working in the housing sector, and especially with old people. The visit to Elderswell Retirement Village especially was really interesting to me. We're currently sort of in the process in Caerphilly of building some more sheltered housing schemes, which we're aiming to be sheltered housing not as we know it, and future-proofing those schemes as well. So it's really interesting to have the tour around Elderswell and make some comparisons between the differences in accommodation that are available for older people in the country. I've also been able to take some inspiration from some of the services and things that are available, and sort of put forward some suggestions that could work for us in Caerphilly as well. So that was really interesting. I also found speakers' points on leadership styles helpful, and I've concluded from the Future Leaders Programme that there isn't really a right or wrong leadership style, and there's definitely no rule book to what you should and shouldn't do. But it's more about what is the right approach that's needed to achieve whatever your outcome or goal is. Having said that, I think there are definitely some consistent qualities that are needed to ensure that a team is motivated and happy and feel supported within the workplace. Some of these include good communication skills, showing empathy, being approachable, and acting with compassion at all times, which are all things that I try to do regardless of the challenges or hurdles that we may face. I really do try and make a conscious effort to display those qualities to my team members. I'll now hand over to Sally, who's going to discuss a little bit more about compassionate leadership.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. So yeah, my understanding of leadership coming from a communications officer perspective was around upholding the housing, health and social care's sector's values and standards across communication practices. But then I read an article from the King's Fund about the 4 behaviours of compassionate leadership. So that's attending, understanding, empathising and helping, and how these can be applied. So I joined the HousingLIN's Future Leaders Programme essentially to learn more about these and how they work in practice. So throughout the last 12 months or so, it's been great hearing from various speakers, including Rory Sandbach. So he's the chair of the Tappy Inquiry. And as mentioned earlier, Kay Allen, the founder of Age Relevance and Diversity, and others who I name drop in my blog, which I'll pop in the chat in a mo, who are all, by the way, great storytellers who described through their own experiences the 4 behaviours of compassionate leadership. So with attending, they describe that as leading with collaboration at the core by developing the ability to listen and maintain curiosity. They talked about understanding the challenges people encounter and using this as an opportunity for growth. And also empathizing as navigating not just leader to employee relationships, but also human to human relationships as well. And then helping in times of crisis or uncertainty. So yeah, by taking thoughtful action to support those around you. So yeah, essentially through that, I've learned that leadership is not about title or position, but more about influence, impact, and inspiration. And by embodying these 4 types of leadership, even as a junior member of the team, you can contribute quite significantly to your role as a leader in the sector. So yeah, I think that's everything from me. Next slide, please, Amy. So I think we thought we'd go around the room and quickly just tell you why you should apply or promote the programme to those who you think might be interested. So from my perspective, participating in the Future Leaders programme presented an exceptional chance for us to connect with people who share similar aspirations, but also it's an opportunity for you to stop and reflect on your own leadership journey. And that by enrolling in this type of programme, specifically with the HousingLIN as a network that brings together professionals from very diverse backgrounds in housing, health and social care, means that you'll gain exposure to a multitude of speakers with varied experiences and, as it says on the screen, offering distinct perspectives and invaluable insights. So Amy, shall I pass back to you for you to...
Yeah, so I found participating in the Future Leaders programme really helpful to do a little bit of self-reflection and sort of focus on, sorry, teams, and to focus on sort of
Amy, I don't know if you can hear us, but we can't hear you. I think
she's just dropped out. That may be one of the Fit 5 Welsh ministers contacting her for a new role. But welcome back. Good leadership is taking a break.
Update, doesn't it, at the most inconvenient times. I'll just share the screen again. Sorry. There we go. Yeah, so it's really helped me to reflect on my sort of leadership styles and what I would like to see myself and what type of leader I would like to be in the future. Yep, so that's me. Shall I pass back to Alice?
Yeah, thanks, Amy. Yeah, I think for me, it's been really useful to understand the housing sector better as a whole and all of the different roles that covers. And I think crucially improving my network, which is so key for being an effective leader. Over to you, Faye.
Thanks. Yeah, I think for me, one of the reasons I applied is because I really wanted to explore what's happening in other parts of the UK as well. And although we all work in housing and we all work specifically for housing that impacts older people in some way, it's been really, really interesting as well to see different perspectives from the private sector, from local authorities, from third sector. It's been a really good way of getting to talk to people that I otherwise would probably have never come into contact with. And that's both within the cohort of this year, but also the speakers. We've had some really, really fascinating, interesting guest speakers who've given up their time to come and talk to us about their experiences. And it's been, in general, it's been really, really thought-provoking and inspiring. So I would recommend to anyone who's thinking of applying, definitely go for it, because you will get a lot out of it. If I go to Banner now, if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks. I agree. I think particularly the different perspectives from different sort of people in the cohort. That's been sort of the biggest takeaway for me, and just listening to, you know, the kind of the way that we come at different issues, or the same issues. You know, when we were looking through the Arms House, I think, you know, we were in a flat, and having all the different perspectives of you know, each space was just really interesting to have, and something I don't usually get to see sort of in the design process. The other thing was, again, the speakers, and they were talking a lot about sort of the future as well, which is something obviously that should be at the forefront of all of our minds, but how they go about thinking about the future and the sort of research that they look into was, again, a different perspective for me, and something that I really learned a lot from. So yeah, I'll pass on to Callum.
Yeah, so initially, when I joined on the programme, I expressed obviously a desire to progress in my career, to move on. So I wanted to learn a lot about leadership and the different things that make you a good leader, and also I have an interest in the field as well. So that was the reason I initially joined on. But after I joined on, I just found it inspiring, really. All the speakers, I mean, everyone on the cohort, I found it very insightful, and I've left with loads of lessons. So yeah, I mean, I would recommend it to anyone who has the same sorts of aspirations. And I don't know who's last to move on to. I think I'm last.
I can go. So yeah, when applying for HousingLIN, I knew that I was entering the housing sector at a different level. So having that exposure to, you know, all different areas within the industry, and that lesson has been very important, but it's also given me the opportunity to showcase what we do at Appleby and United St Saviour's, and kind of get people to think about the social connection of older people's housing, and being an advocate for that. And because, you know, there's so much research that shows it's social connection sometimes that can be the killer to health, and just coming it from that aspect. Over to you, Emily.
Thanks, Morgan. I think for me, I wanted to expand my network and meet new people and just gain new experiences. So it's helped me continue that leadership journey, gain confidence from those experiences people have spoke about, others on the cohort, other speakers. So yeah, it's good to see the impact of what you build in development as well. I think sometimes you can forget about the final product and how that gets run. So those conversations we had with Morgan in a little pair were really, really interesting. And yeah, I think that concludes the reflection from the cohort. So I'll pass back to Jeremy.
Well, Emily and everybody, actually, what a wonderful presentation. And I thought, I'm sure Jamie would agree, that, you know, for us who sort of worked in the sector for 35 plus years, it's we wish we had that opportunity in our early careers. I think you wowed many people to silence. So there aren't many questions actually being posted, but I certainly would like to ask you a couple, and also I'm sure Jamie as well. Abdul, just to come back to your questions, we try and limit the sort of number of people sort of on the programme to about 10. We just find that works best, and I'll ask the team here to see whether they felt that was about right. One of our concerns over the years has been we don't get flooded with applications, but we do want to make sure that we sort of pull together a cohort whereby we can actually enable people to express their own individual voices and not get lost. And a year program sounds a long time, but in reality, we meet 4 times a year, and it may take 1 or 2 meetings before the group really start to gel. And often it's their own personal ability to sort of contact and do the work outside and make the connections outside of the formal sort of structure that's really important. So things like WhatsApp groups and Facebook and whatever. But I just wanted to sort of say, for anybody who is thinking of applying, and we're brilliant. We've got Rob, we've got Carla, who's a delegate, and in fact, I've just seen Henrietta's there as well. And if they want to say anything, please do let us know. This is not an academic course. If anybody comes with an expectation that they're going to get a qualification out of it, that you're in the wrong course. Okay, what we've deliberately done with Jamie's support And, you know, we try to nurture this so that it's about trying, I think Faye sort of picked up, it's about trying to get the lived experience and what worked well for people in their own journeys, rather than thinking about you're going to read a theoretical framework or a policy document all about leadership. We encourage you to read those, as Sally has done with the King's Fund, but we're not saying it's a requirement for this programme. What we really want to do is enable you to go on a personal journey, as you've heard today, one of self-discovery about what your own personal goals and ambitions are. We would love you to improve. We are a learning and improvement network. That's our ethos. We want to enable that to happen. And on some of the delegates, we've got members here who are senior leaders. You know, Richard, I've seen Josie, I've seen on the delegate list. These people are senior leaders in their own field who are part of the LIN's leadership set at a much higher level. So, you know, we really want to encourage you to participate and build on the peer-to-peer. And I can't remember who, I think several of you said about build your own networks. I think Alice mentioned, you know, really important about networking. I've got a few other things I want to come back to, but let me go to Jamie first. If any thoughts and reflections of what you've heard this morning.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy, and thank you all so much for your very sort of candid and frank sort of views on the experience of the programme. Actually, as you as leaders, I think my reflections are just to say we're all on a journey. I'm on a journey. Jeremy's on a journey. We're all on a journey. We're not actually at a destination or ever will. And this is why these types of programs are really, really valuable to anybody at any stage in their careers, because what you have to offer is a really fresh and diverse view on what good looks like. Yeah, and for me, you know, don't be afraid to make mistakes would be my bit. I'm going to probably do a bit of where my advice would be for you. You know, learn from your mistakes, but don't be afraid to make mistakes. Yeah, if you're in safe space, trial things, really test the boundaries of what you should be doing. Because as a leader, you'll ultimately know what to stop as well as what to start, what to push as pull, and what to finish. And what you need to be sure of as you're evolving, if you don't try and push the boundaries a little bit, actually you won't get to where you want to get to. And at some point, when you feel a little bit uncomfortable, actually it's not too bad to feel uncomfortable. Bring people on the journey with you, just to make sure you do. But don't be worried about stuff. Right? There's processes, procedures, governance, and all sorts of different things that can create that. But test your boundaries. Too many people are too safe. They're too trying to sort of behave themselves a bit. Don't worry about things. You know, we love it inside and outside a working environment. You see people just testing the boundaries. You know, it's okay to do that. But celebrate your successes as leaders. Make sure that when you do have a success, whatever that success is, a project or a career or whatever, celebrate it would be my advice. Because what you tend to do, and you know, Emily probably seen it from our company. We'll get an amazing planning application. We'll have a split second of elation, then on to the next thing. And what you need to make sure is that you celebrate those, because they're hard fought and hard won. What you need to also do is just match your purpose with the working environment. So what you're doing, find the connection that's strong, gives a strong sense of purpose. If you've got a strong sense of purpose, you won't feel like you're working. Trust me with this. And anybody listening into this is exactly what you're doing. And when I've seen this about your learning and all your different views about where you are, who you work for, who your partner's been in this exercise, and the people like Kay Allen, who is a phenomenal force of good in age of relevance and as well as in her time at B&Q, which I'm sure she told you about. You know, these people have matched their purpose with what they do. Yeah, they're really doing that, which is wonderful. And back yourselves. You know, the last year's cohort coming into this year's cohort, next year's cohort, back it, and then test your line managers and test best people. You know, just drop me an email if you've got a question. I'm more than happy to help as much as I possibly can, because whoever said, I think it was Alice, and I've used this term a lot. You know, your net worth is your net worth. So as you build your business, right, your worth will become more if you become more networking. We're a human being, not human doing. We're people who like to be with other people. That's part of our core way. And as you build your networks and as you build your careers, I have people that I was a junior nothing with at some point who now run large businesses that you have cups of tea with and learn about what they're doing. be curious, be fascinated. But you're on a journey, and it's been a wonderful opportunity. I've got a few questions, but I'm going to probably take them outside this, Jeremy, if that's okay, because I feel like I've named people out and all that sort of stuff. But it's wonderful, and thank you very much for letting me share this time with you. It's been an absolute honour. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you again for doing this journey together as well with Ivy as well. Just a couple of other little things from me in terms of process. This is not an internship program. This is really a learning program by experience. So, I mean, Abdul, please do ask your daughter to apply. We will certainly sift those and go through and encourage applications. And I see in the chat box others have already said that. The other thing we love doing is actually bringing the past cohort future leaders to meet the new one as well. So I think, Sally, we had Jack who came, who was from an alms house background, although he now works. In fact, having been on the Future Leaders programme, he got a new job, which was great for him. But again, and the work that Carla does, we now meet up on other programs where she's taken a real lead on sort of design and inclusion, with Rob in the work in North Somerset, and with Henrietta in her architectural practice as well. So again, we want to continue that dialogue, and perhaps what we should do is a Future Leaders event with all the cohorts next year, bring all your learning and see what the pathways where they've gone to. We're sort of got about 15 minutes or so. Are there any final thoughts and comments that I can ask the future leaders from this cohort to share? You've done brilliantly in sort of giving your personal accounts. You've also name-checked a number of people, but also we've name-checked you by uploading the blogs that you've written for us in advance of this summit. And if anybody is watching and is interested in joining, one of the only requirements, other than giving your time up for 3 or 4 sessions a year, is we do invite you to write a blog on your experience. And then, like Faye, Morgan, Emily, Banner, Callum, and others have said this morning, just to give an account of that. And I think this worked beautifully today. So any final thoughts?
Jeremy, I'd like to add just a bit about bringing the sort of previous cohorts together. It'd be welcome if we could host at a convenient location if people came together, because I think that's a great networking opportunity for people coming in, and maybe even interested people who are a bit curious, about what it's about, just to see whether people come in, and we'd be more than happy to sort of bring everybody in and host an event if that was of any use.
That'd be brilliant. I'm also conscious that our first and second cohorts and a bit of the third overlapped with COVID, so actually much of it was online, and so I think perhaps our second cohort who may only have met for about an hour during the whole year in person. All right, well, we'll do that then, Jamie. We'll have a conversation offline about how we may take that forward. I'm just going to have a quick look in the Q&A box to see if anybody else has been inspired to ask you a question. I see that most of the comments are in the chat box, congratulating all of you and being so inspirational. If it's okay with you, then I'm going to suggest we buy back a little bit of your time and bring this session to a close. What you won't know is that the Chief Exec of Stoke Council is our keynote speaker this afternoon, Callum. So no pressure, mate, but perhaps in 20 years' time we might see you there. But again, aim high, aim pure, and I think, as all of you said, that compassionate element and the values that we share are really ones to drive you forward. Jerome, can I just ask you to put the final slide on the screen, then I will bring this session to a close. Well, again, on behalf of the HousingLIN and IVG, thank you very much for your support today. It's been a fantastic session. If you've been inspired and want to contribute to the LIN in any way, please let us know, whether that's speaking at a future event, becoming a sponsor of the LIN, or engaging with us in other ways. Please drop us an email on the email address here. We operate a number of regional programmes, and particularly in Wales, Scotland and across England. Much of that is virtual at the moment, but we very much hope that in time, as Jamie's saying, we will get back into in-person events as well. It only leaves me to thank everybody who's contributed to this year's fantastic cohort, our sponsors IVG, and the team behind the scenes. Sally, who's you see had 2 roles today, one both being our communication membership officer, but also being on that cohort. Jerome and Alice, who is behind the scenes and not with us on the screen today, for all your support in making this a really positive session. Thank you very much and have a lovely afternoon.